What's happening, fishing friends? Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new $99 Lose LFS speed spool. Now I'm using new lightly. I believe this version came out at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, but as you've all seen, or if you haven't seen, I did a review on the older Lose LFS. I believe this was the 2014 version is when this came out, but great reel. It's a very popular reel. I get a ton of questions on it, and I think it is in the running for one of the best reels at that $99 price point. So today we're going to take a look at the new and improved version. Luz said they've changed some things. I do like the things they've changed, so we're going to take a look at this, break it apart, look at some of those changes, and compare it to that older model of that Lose LFS speed spool. So enough talking over here. Let's go tabletop to take a closer look. Okay, so this new Lose speed spool. So what are we looking at for the features, and how's it really going to differ against this older version of that speed spool? Well, first off, again, both of them are $99. You can see that the shape has changed just a little bit. I was looking at sizes just here a second ago, and it's pretty hard to tell the difference, but you put them up against each other, and the new version is just a tiny bit longer, not by much, just a tiny bit. If you put them on the same plane this way, it does appear that the newer version is just slightly shorter in height, not a ton, just a little bit. Now this does still have the aluminum frame with those graphite side plates. Both versions do have that external lube port. That's what that's for there. Take that screw out and you can grease your main gear there if you need to. Speaking of the main gear, this does have a brass Hamai cut main gear, and it's supposed to be part of their upgraded speed gears. So the Hamai cut is just a different CNC cutting machine, essentially, that's cutting that brass main gear inside of here. So it's supposed to make for a more pleasant, you know, smooth experience when you're reeling it in. And it does feel really good and smooth. You can see when you spin it here, it does have a good free spool on it there. That's pretty good for a $99 reel, I'd say. Then of course, that's when the brakes are just set on 0. These are the MCS magnetic control system brakes, the magnetic brakes that are just controlled from the outside here. Turn those brakes up, and you can see the difference in the magnetic stopping power there. Really diminishes that spool spin. Now both of these do have 9+1 bearings, so they kept the bearing count the same. This does have a clicking drag on it. The spool tension does not click though. Now this new version weighs in at 7.1 ounces. The old version weighed in at 6.9 ounces. The old version was just a hair lighter, but again, I mean, between that, you're really not going to notice that difference when you feel them in hand. They feel like the same weight. Now one nice update they did make to this one is they did buff that drag. So this does come with a 15-pound drag on it. The old one that I had was only 10-pound drag. Now, as you can see on mine here, that's me pushing with both thumbs. I had this baby locked down, and I used this for frogging. Didn't have any issues with drag ever slipping. The reel has never broke. This reel has honestly given me 0 problems at all. So that's one thing for me. You know, maybe my, I guess, kind of overall experience with this is maybe a little jaded, just because I've never had an issue with it. But for me, a $99 reel, listen to this. That's a $99 reel that I've had for, I don't know, 5-6 years now. I've cleaned it every year, still nice and smooth. I didn't clean it last year, so it could use a cleaning now, but can still see the worm gear in there, still nice and clean. Still a good reel. I mean, I have no issues using this now, and it's, like I said, 5 or 6 years old. So they did update the drag on this. Now, I don't think that's a huge thing. I think sometimes people think about the drag too much. You know, you look at Shimano, and they're notorious for not having high drag numbers, right? 7, 10, whatever pound drag. And those reels are great. So something with this, you know, if you were fighting a big, huge fish and you didn't have enough drag where that fish is consistently, you know, spooling your line and burning out your drag, that's a big deal. But on a lot of the low profile bait casters like this, if you need to, you can have that drag locked down. And I've caught, you know, a 4 or 5 pound fish on this. Not an issue, right? That fish isn't going to pull drag out on this when I completely lock it down. So I think, to me, the more important thing on drag is it smooth? You know, when I tighten that drag up a little bit and that fish starts pulling, you can see there where it's not moving. Is that going to pull out that drag smoothly and consistently when I need it to? You know, say if I have 10-pound fluorocarbon on here and I'm fishing a little bit lighter crankbaits. I think that makes more of a difference than having the 10-pound drag versus the 15-pound drag. Now, I know some people like a heavier drag, right? It gives you, you know, more of an array or an area there where you can set it. Kind of a personal thing, but that's just kind of how I look at it. Does have the same line capacity, 120 yards of 12-pound mono on both of these. Now, one upgrade that I like that they did to this is it does come stock now with a 95mm handle. So this is a 95mm handle here. They also put on an aluminum retaining nut there, whereas on the old one it has a plastic deal, and I think that was the one natural or that came stock on it. The handles here, this is actually a black handle. This is a 95mm black handle I took off of like the Luz Laser Pro, that Bass Pro Cabela's one, because the old version used to come with an 85mm handle, and I hated that little tiny handle. I was always dinging my knuckles on it when I would set the hook hard. So that's just me. I do like a little bit bigger handle. I personally am not a fan of these slick knobs. I do opt usually for like a little bit bigger, grippier knob on anything where I'm setting the hook hard, frogging, jigs, Texas rigs. Now, if I'm just casting and retrieving, it's not as big of a deal, but these handles aren't horrible. I mean, they're comfortable, but you just don't get the best grip on them. So I'm kind of like, for me. Like I talked about it, both of them do have those magnetic brakes, and I'll open that up and show you. Very easy to get into. It's just got a little lever here. You just take your thumb and pull that open there, and that moves that pin so you can twist your side plate off. Kind of the regular standard Doyo magnetic brakes that we're used to, right? It's got the 5 little brake discs there, and once your spool starts moving, that creates a magnetic field, and that's what's slowing down your spool. So those are the same, easy to use, and I think for a beginner, this is the best braking system. Unlike the SLX, you don't have to open the side plate and take it off to get in there to change your brakes, right? It's literally, you're just moving this dial in conjunction with your spool tension knob. That's how you're setting the brakes. And I find that the magnetic brakes are a little bit more consistent. So I think for a beginner, I think they're just easier to use. Now, you can argue both ways. Some people like the centrifugal brakes. Some people like magnetic. Some people like to have both options on the reel. It really comes down to a preference thing. All of them work as long as you have them all tuned correctly to the reel and the baits and the way you use your reel. All of them work. Now, one other thing that's interesting here I noticed, now I never rate a reel based on where it's made, right? You know, I know a lot of purists want like the Japanese made reels, but heck, even the lower price Shimano and Daiwa stuff isn't made in Japan anymore. Malaysia, Taiwan, we see a lot of the more budget reels made in China. And as I've said before, I don't care where they're made. I'm gonna use it and tell you all how it performs for me and what I think of the reel itself, not just based on where it's made. Now, like I said, this reel never gave me any issues. As you can see there, this reel was made in China. The old LFS reels, $100 reels, made in China. Fine, right? Now I noticed their $100 LFS reels are made in Korea, as you can see there. Now, usually, I think Doyo is the company, Korean company that makes like their higher end Luz reels. Usually are made in the Korean factory. I don't know if Doyo has a subset in China, if that's where these are made, or if it's a whole different factory. I always thought it was like the Doyo China, just a different subset. I don't know for sure. I know there's a number of different factories, Doyo, Banex, a number of different ones out there, but a lot of them are making the same reels, and the same reels for different companies in the same place. So like you might find a Luz being made next to an Abu, next to a Bass Pro, next to, whatever else. So like I said, I like to use the reel for what it is, how it feels to me and how it performs. I don't just look at it and say, oh, it's made here, I'm not going to use it. But I did find that interesting. Like I said, usually they're making their higher priced reels over in Korea. So I don't know if everything has moved there, minus, maybe like the $50 reels or whatever. But this is, like I said, one of the best beginner reels, so maybe they found the value in that, putting out a really good reel at $100. I don't know. Like I said, offhand, it feels really good. It's got a good spin to it. It's nice and smooth. Now, one big upgrade that I think does make a big difference, bearing supported pinion gear. They call it the P2 pinion gear. And one thing I've noticed on other reels, this reel will even do it too. Never had troubles on hook sets, but some reels, if you crank them hard down, see how you get that little click in there? I have roasted cheap reels on really hard hook sets, frogging and stuff. You get that clicky noise, and I believe it is that pinion gear getting out of alignment with the main gear. Once you hit it so hard, it keeps wanting to twist, and it kind of moves it. I noticed with this one, I tried as hard as I could, and I could not get that to click in there. So that's something I've noticed on, like I said, cheaper reels. I've completely burnt them, broke them. This one doesn't do it, and I'm wondering if that has to do with that P2 supported pinion gear, because when you take this off, some reels, they sound like it's crackling and crunching apart. You take this out of here, that's actually your pinion gear right there, that brass kind of four-way cut looking deal there. When you turn this, it still turns fine, right? And I believe that's because that pinion gear is supported by a, did I say pinion? Pinion gear supported by a bearing. So let's, let me put something down here. Let's take this apart and look in there and look at what the difference is with that bearing supported pinion gear. Ah, interesting. Okay, so what they're talking about for this pinion gear, so for those of you who have never taken apart a reel or are wanting to know, this is your pinion gear right here. So this is the little guy where your spool, once you put your spool in your actual baitcaster right there, the spool shaft goes up in through the pinion gear like that, right? You can see this pinion gear does look a little different from the older model that I took apart. And I did a full tear down and everything when I did my baitcaster cleaning video on this reel. So if you're interested, I'll link that at the end. I'll also link the review I did on this reel at the end, so you can check those out and look at the difference. But it is a different looking pinion gear, and you can see that's what they're talking about, it being supported. So inside here, and I was going to take this off, I did have it off, I was looking at tolerances and stuff when I was doing that hyperlapse, but that's your spool tension knob, and that's the pinion they're talking about in there. Now normally that pinion is pretty small, and I can actually show you here, and it really just kind of supports the spool shaft. It doesn't do anything with the actual pinion gear itself. So I do like the addition, the change in here. Now this one you can see I have a hybrid ceramic bearing in here. This is a spool speed bearing I've got in there. But you can see it's a very small bearing. It only supports the actual spool. That's the spool that I'm touching right there. The spool comes through the end of it. On this one, you can see it's larger, a larger hole. You can see this goes all the way through there. And that pinion actually sits inside there. So the end of that pinion, this part of the pinion right here, sits inside of that bearing, keeping that nice and tight right there so that spool can spin inside of that. That is sitting there stuck. I like that upgrade a lot. That's a good upgrade in my opinion. It's going to keep everything feeling better together, more solid. I do notice as I take this apart, the main gear does look different as well. So on the old LFS, there's not a ring here. As you can see, there's a ring in the middle of this right there. That's not the way it is on the old one. It's just flat. So that looks a little bit different. So that might be, I know this is a higher speed reel. This is an 8-speed reel. Maybe that's why. But now let's put this back together and continue talking about it. All right, now that we've got the old speed spool spooled up here, let's give it a couple casts and see how this reel does. I don't have the brakes set very high. This is that Super K Jigs. Oh yeah. Clacking, I think they call it. Essentially like, you know, vibrating jig, chatterbait type deal. This water's pretty clear, so I don't really expect to get a bite on the old chatterbait in this, but really just wanting to try this reel out and see how it does, see how it casts. So I've got the reel set on 6 for the brakes. Spool tension is set so there's no side-to-side play. That's what we're looking at. Nice, good long cast. That thing casts really nice. And this is 15-pound PLine Fluoroclear. It's copolymer. Nice and soft. It's a good line for beginners if you're learning how to cast a baitcaster. Not real stiff and wiry like some of the 100% fluorocarbons, but feels good. I like this combo. Feels good on here. That's that clacking. Looks good too. Nice. Yep. Come on. Got him. Not a monster. Drag was not set. Decent little guy. All right, there we go. One on the Texas rig. Fine wood. Pitch to wood. We got to hit the wood with the old, some sort of Texas rig. This is all I had rigged up. Over a pound. There we go. Little pocket rocket. Thanks for eating, fella. All right, now that I've had the reel out on the water for the past couple weeks, let's talk about what I think some of the pros and cons are to this reel. So for the pros, number one, the ease of use has to be the nicest thing about this. And I kind of roll a few things into that. So far using this for the last couple weeks, I have not had a single backlash with it. And that's not me bragging about my Baitcaster usage paralysis. It's the ease of use of this reel. You know, it's that simple magnetic external brakes. They work, they function well. I think this type of baitcaster is a lot better for somebody who's just starting out, as opposed to something like the SLX, which has those internal centrifugal brakes. SLX is still an awesome reel, love that reel, but I think for a beginner trying to get the hang of changing those internal brakes and how many to have on, are they on or off? People often get confused with that. I think the external brake system is just much easier. You know, turn it up towards max or turn it down towards lower. That's all you've got to do. You don't have to take any side plates off. It's right there. Casting distance on it felt really good. I haven't, you know, put it up against anything as far as measuring, but distance on it felt very good. I've got some 15-pound PLine Fluorocarbon on here. I have this on a pretty regular 7'3" medium heavy. This is the Okuma Serrano rod. Liking that so far. And you know, something like a little 3/8 ounce, this is the Klaken from Super K Jigs. Zings that out there with no issues at all. And I tried a few different weight lures on this. Felt good. Casted well. It's easy to tune in. I just feel like that ease of use for somebody that's going to buy this, who wants, you know, baitcaster, they can just pick up minimal stuff and get it dialed in. That's what you're getting. Now the second big pro to me has to be the number of improvements they've actually made on this. So over the old one, you're getting that nice larger handle. You're getting that P2 supported pinion gear in there, pinion bearing up inside there that I showed you. Good improvements, like I showed you. This one's made in Korea, not in China, like a lot of the under, you know, $100 reels. Does that automatically make a difference? No, I've told you before, I don't focus solely where a baitcaster's made. I want to use it, put it in my hands, and tell you how I actually feel with it using it real world application. They've also increased the drag over that old version that I had. So to me, a number of meaningful improvements on it. Stuff you actually need, things that you're going to use, not just a bunch of, you know, weird stuff and raising the price because it's more colorful or has a different grip, stuff that just doesn't really make sense. And that kind of brings me to my third pro of this reel is you get everything that you need, not the stuff that you don't. You know, Lew's has a ton of good baitcasters out there and some that I kind of question. You know, the Crush comes up a lot as a question for me. How come you don't have the new Crush yet? Well, the Crush I think retails for like $160, has a graphite frame and is an extremely similar reel to this, right? It does have the dual brakes, it's got some wind knobs, but really, are you getting that much more for it, you know? And I'm not saying don't get that reel. I have used it, Randizzle has it. I like it, it's a solid reel, but you know, like for this guy at $100, to me, you're getting everything that you need, everything that you would want in a reel, aluminum frame, a little bit larger handle now, solid drag, easy to use brakes, everything that you really want and need in a solid little workhorse baitcaster, and not a bunch of extra things that you don't. So to me, that's kind of the third biggest thing to just kind of encompass all those together is you get everything that you need for a good reel. And when it comes to cons, you know, I was kind of scratching my head looking at this, trying to really figure out what would be the cons of this reel. Now, I know some people would say, you know, there might be some reels that cost a little bit more that feel more refined, right? That just feel smoother than this reel and such. Or, you know, it's got a different feel on my hand that I like better, or, you know, it's got special grips that I like. I think there's small cosmetic things that you could maybe argue based on your own personal preferences, but I don't feel comfortable putting that in here and really saying that's a negative to this reel, right? You know, I kind of scratch my head to find anything. I'm not a huge fan of these slick knobs. Maybe if they could switch to something like that, like the SLX, I think does come with better knobs out of the box. But I don't know. I can't really say one big major thing like when I put this on my hand that this is a huge negative. Watch out for that. Maybe if you're somebody that has really big hands, because this is a little bit smaller, low profile frame baitcaster, maybe that's something you don't like. You want something a little meaty or chunky. You know, I don't know. That's me kind of grasping at straws. Honestly, for the money, I think it is a very good, solid little baitcaster. So you have seen the new version. I showed you compared to the old version torn apart. I showed you some fish catches out on the water casting. Comment below and let me know what you think. Do you think the Lew's LFS at $100 is one of the best reels out there? I certainly think it is. You know, Lew's isn't paying me to say this or anything. That's just my honest opinion. Right at that $100 price point, like I've said, I think that's where you really start to get into that next tier of reels that, you know, are going to be a little bit more sturdier with those aluminum frames. Come with a little bit better features, are a little bit easier to use, you know, over like a $30 or $50 baitcaster. So So far in my testing and the old one that I had, I love it. I don't think you're going to go wrong buying this one. If you just want something with no frills, that's going to kind of do everything you need it to. But that's just my opinion. And again, that's what a lot of the reviews are, is, you know, somebody's opinion. So comment below and let me know what you think of it. And if you want to see more reviews like this, teardowns, comparisons, you know, first impressions on the water, whatever it is, comment below and let me know. Now, today's subscribed fishing friend is my guy, Nick, Fatboy Fishing. Dude, thank you for always watching, always supporting me. Good guy, we talk back and forth. It's funny the number of good fishing friends that I have met literally just through Instagram and YouTube who, you know, one way or another, we've ended up talking back and forth to each other and kind of become, you know, online friends. So to all you good people, you Fatboy Fishing, everybody else that continues to talk to me, support me, it blows me away. Again, I'm just a guy in his basement filming fishing videos because I love to talk about fishing and gear and stuff. So thank you all. But that's enough for me. All this has to get on the computer and edited. So thank you very much for watching. And until next time.